Hello, everybody. The next team on our college football preview series is Baylor. Bears coming off a sensational season, 12 wins, a Big 12 championship, and the belief that this program is primed to compete for many years to come under head coach Dave Aranda. Now, Aranda is coming into his third year, but they've come a long way since his first season, which was a mess in Waco. Coming up, we'll talk to Sam Kahn Jr. of The Athletic to break down the Bears a little bit more. But as for Aranda, it was all about embracing what he wanted his program to look like under his tutelage, not carry over what made others successful. Last year, the offense was re-energized, new offensive coordinator. The defense hit people in the mouth, and the Bears played that smash-mouth football with an attitude that was lacking the previous season. But they will have to replace a lot of talent, specifically on defense. Jalen Petrie, for one, last year's Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, and now he's making plays for the Houston Texans. Let's look at the schedule. 2022 looks like this. The big test right out of the chute, second week, is when this team goes to BYU and take on the Cougars. Future Big 12 opponent. A trip to Provo, never an easy thing to do. And you know the Cougars will be wanting to show what they have to offer next year in the Big 12. After that, Oklahoma State is the next big test. That game a rematch of last year's Big 12 title game. The good thing is that it will be in Waco, and the Bears love playing in front of their home fans in McLean Stadium on the Brazos River. One of the best settings in the state, if you ask me. They do have a trip to Oklahoma, but they finished the year with a couple of home games before facing the Longhorns in Austin on the 40 acres. Here's what Dave Aranda and his players are saying as they prepare to face the Albany Great Danes in Week 1.
The number one thing for us is to put our identity out, to play with some great competitive maturity, to have really strong energy, and in doing those things, hope that we get the result that we want. And so whatever it takes for that would be the ideal. And then anything after that, right? Any opportunity we can have to get guys work when they deserved work is always strong. But I'm really not thinking that way going into this, thinking that this is a brand new team. We have ideals and we have values that we would love for this team to identify with, but this team ain't done anything yet. And so we're going to be tested on Saturday, and let's see where that is.
Dave Aranda is such a calm, cool, and collected coach. I've heard that from recruits that are going to Baylor. Speaking of recruiting, the Bears are doing great. Many services ranking them as having the third best class this year and next year behind Texas and Texas A&M in the state. Now to Sam Kahn Jr. of The Athletic as we continue to break down the Baylor Bears. Sam Kahn of The Athletic, always happy to talk to you. We usually talk about like general topics in college football, but this time let's get team specific. The Baylor Bears, the defending Big 12 champions. So when I say Baylor, what's your first thought?
Strong, physical, big on the line of scrimmage. They bring back a lot on both lines of scrimmage. 4 returning offensive lineman starters and entire 2 deep on the defensive line back. Plus they added impact transfer in Jackson Player. This is a big physical team that's going to impose its will. They very much changed their identity last year, and I think they really found something that worked for them. I think Dave Aranda really was able to unlock the potential of this team, and I think they have a really, really solid foundation to work on, not just this year, but going forward long term.
Yeah, let's talk about Dave Aranda first before we get to the position players, because his first year after Matt Rule left, not great. Second year, things totally changed. And I was reading something that his nickname a long time ago was Fence Post. He was so stoic, and I thought that was really funny. If you look at him on the sidelines, I was talking to a recruit recently of the 2023 class, and they were fired up about the position coaches, but they liked Dave because he was just that calm personality. From your interactions with him, it seems like he's kind of leveled things out, and everybody's kind of bought into what his personality is all about.
Yeah, when he was a coordinator, he was very much a fade into the background guy. He loved to be in his office, watching film on the whiteboard, drawing up plays. He really got, I think we talked last year, he told me, I really got lost in ball and just the X's and O's of it all. And he loved that. He's a real student of the game. But when he became a head coach, you have to be more vocal. You have to be more assertive because you are the face of the program. And that's out of his comfort level. So that 2020 season, I think, was a really big learning experience for him. He had to learn how to assert himself. He had to learn how to be more vocal and make sure his identity of what he thought a winning football team should be gets across, not just to his staff, but to his players and everyone in the building. And he's really come out of his shell a little bit more. He's not ever going to be the most gregarious and most charismatic guy out there, but I think he's found a way to grow in that role as a head coach and be more vocal while still being true to his identity himself. Very, very smart, very intellectual, deep thinker. Definitely, you're going to hear him say some things that you don't hear other head coaches say. I think last year, I remember at a press conference, he quoted a book from the Berenstain Bears. And I don't think that I've ever seen or heard that from another football coach, but he is that kind of guy. But he's definitely started to find himself and what his image is going to be as a head coach.
Berenstein Bears. You've got kids. I've got kids.
I
I've
do,
read
yeah.
Many of Berenstein Bears books in my day. So I hope he
Absolutely.
keeps quoting them in his press conferences. But you talk to coaches, especially at the college level now, for years. Developing your own identity as a coach is not easy, right? Especially if you're taking over a program that was so successful that Matt Rule did and built it up the way he had. What is the key to that, you think? Is it just like a coach by coach basis? Is it just kind of forming what your program should be all about and getting to buy in? Like, that whole process is not easy for a coach to do.
No, it's not. And that was something that I think Dave was hesitant with at first because, like you said, he came into a program that was successful. They were 11-3 the year before he got there. They went to the Sugar Bowl. They went to the Big 12 championship. And his default in year one was, hey, they've got a good thing going here. Let's don't change a lot of it. And he quickly found out that that's probably not going to work because it's not necessarily what he believes. And ultimately, establishing that identity became being about true to yourself and true to your core principles. And Dave's true principles are, obviously, he's a big time defensive mind, but he believes in the team being physical, being able to impose as well, being able to run the football. That first year, they had an offensive staff that was a mix of guys who had really, really deep passing backgrounds and backgrounds in throwing the ball down the field a lot. They're still going to do that, and they do that with Jeff Grimes, but all of it is built off the run. It's built off the wide zone. It's built off of play action pass. You're going to see them go under center a lot more than most other teams will. They do a lot of bootlegs and nakeds and waggles, and so that is more in line with what Dave wants a team to be and believes a team should be. And I think you saw it manifest itself on the field. Grimes was a terrific hire last year, really unlocked, helped turn that offense around. That offensive line, which was a question mark in 2020, became really a strength of the team and one of the best, definitely the best in the conference, one of the best in the country last year, and really helped flip the identity of that team.
Yeah, Connor Galvin. I just looked down and make sure I had that name right. He's a Katy product, and so he's kind of one of their anchors up front. I guess when you bring in your coaches, you got to play to the strengths of your team. And they got some big boys up there in the front. We're going to get to defense and some of the players that they have to replace on defense, but on offense, they should be putting up on some big numbers again. Blake Shapen, to get towards the end of the season last year, I remember him playing. He looked pretty solid, looked in command of the offense, and he should be the guy under center again. And what do you think this offense has to offer again this year?
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch because, like you said, you start up front and you've got those four starters up front. Connor Galvin anchoring at left tackle. They got three other starters up front, and they have other experienced guys in the two deep. So you really, I think Jeff Grimes and Eric Mateos, our offensive line coach, feels like they have at least 8 guys they can win with up front. The tight ends are back, which is a really key part of this offense. Ben Sims leading the way there, but they're going to have to fill some voids. The 2 starting receivers are gone. Tyquan Thornton went to the draft. R.J. Sneed transferred to Colorado. Abram Smith, he was out of eligibility, the running back, who was the all-time leading rusher single season for Baylor last year. So those are key pieces they're going to have to replace. They do have talent in those spots, but it's going to be some new faces. Monterey Baldwin is the receiver you're going to see. He had that touchdown in the Sugar Bowl. You'll probably see a lot of him. Very, very fast receiver, small, but really can go. Running back, you're going to see a lot of different faces from Tay McWilliams, Squirrel Williams. There's going to be a lot of different guys I think you're going to see in and out. Maybe even Josh Fleeks, who moved over from receiver. But Shapen, to your point on him, is he really did look good. The 2 starts he had last year in place of Gary Bohannon helped them win the Big 12 championship against Oklahoma State. I think what Shapen does is he gives the offense some potential to be more effective downfield. I think Grimes really loves what Shapen can do from an accuracy standpoint, from a deep ball standpoint. And he also can run it a little bit. You know, he may not be the pure runner that Gary Bohannon was, but he can certainly scramble, throw on the run, throw on awkward arm angles. I think Shapen's going to be really fascinating to watch as he moves into being the starter from wire to wire, as opposed to just the small sample size that we saw last year in 2 starts that he had.
Well, and if you're going to be doing the bootlegs and all that sort of stuff, you're going to have a guy that moves. And I know Shapen's the guy, but they have another guy behind them that a lot of people in the Houston area know very well, especially Shadow Creek, Kyron Drones. It's not his time yet, right? But that is, I mean, you got options, right? I mean, I know Bohannon left, but you have, if this doesn't work, I think Drones could be a good player too. He's still developing, but that's an interesting quarterback combination that they have in the backfield for the Bears.
No doubt, no doubt, and that's one reason too why they were confident enough to make the decision to go with Blake Shapen in the spring and name him as a starter in the spring, knowing that Gary Bohannon, who started all of last season, might transfer, is because they felt good about Kyron Drones. He came a long way in his freshman season, and toward the end of the year, you know, I talked to Jeff Grimes. He said you could see that he started to get it. He started to understand it. There's no question of Kyron Drones' physical talent. I think you'll hear the term at the Baylor staff thrown around. He's a physical freak. The guy can throw it. He can run.
High school. I mean, high school just stood out from everybody that he went up against.
No, 100%. And so the physical talent is there. It's just a matter of getting acclimated and growing in the offense. And between his time in the rotation last season, and he didn't get very much field time, but there was a point after Bohannon got hurt that he became the number 2 guy. And you're there thinking, hey, if he's got to go in the game, he's got to be ready. I think Kyron was able to take that, grow from that experience, and grow this offseason. And they're really excited about him long term just because of his talent, the way he's approached, the way he's learned. And I think they believe he has a bright future there in Waco.
All right, defensively, let me look here. They got 4 starters on defense coming back, so they're going to have to replace some talent on that side of the ball. Texans fans are realizing what they had with Jalen Petrie up there, the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. The kid is an amazing talent, a ball hawk, so that's a big loss, right? And they have other guys they have to replace. But if they play a physical brand of football, I think guys tend to buy into that a little bit more, and that's an easier sell and easier to develop guys if they play a physical brand of football. I don't know. That's kind of my take, but what do you see from that side of the ball?
No doubt. No, and they are going to be physical, but they're going to be smart. And the thing that helps Baylor a lot in this equation is the consistency in the coaching. You got Dave Aranda, who is a defensive-minded head coach, but he's had the same coordinator now all 3 years at Baylor, Ron Roberts. So they're running the same stuff. The guys who have come up in the system who haven't started, they've been playing the same stuff for the last 3 years. So that helps a whole lot when you get some of these guys into the system and playing more real snaps. But I think when you start up front, they don't have a ton of stars returning, but they have all those defensive linemen returning. I think that's huge. You got Gabe Hall back, Siaki Ika's back, Cole Maxwell, and then they've got the 2 deep behind them are back. And then they brought in Jackson Player, the transfer from Tulsa, who I think they feel like is going to be a really big impact guy. Him and Ika in the middle, probably rotating a little bit, is going to be a real big impact. It's going to give a lot of interior offensive linemen problems this year. And so when you start with that, if you can get pressure up front with just 3, maybe rushing a 4th, that really helps you on the back end, because then that you've got more guys to cover all the receivers and tight ends and running backs coming out of the backfield. The big question for me with this defense is these 2 guys you mentioned, Jalen Petrie and Terrell Bernard. That, to me, they were the heart and soul of that defense. And you're going to have to replace those 2. And it's not easy. Petrie was Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12 last year. Bernard was a true leader and one of the top tacklers, not just in the conference, but in the country. Those 2 guys were mainstays, and they were part of this program, multi-year starters that really led the way. So that's not easy to replace, but they do have talent in those spots. I think Dylan Doyle, who you saw was a starter last year, I think you're going to see him grow. Matt Jones, who spot started and played some time, I think you'll see him grow into that role. Garmin Randolph, who's been the kind of edge rusher role, he started to grow a little bit last year. I think you'll see him grow even more this year. And then the other question is on the back end, the secondary. They're going to be really young, but they still do have a lot of talent that they're confident in. And they're going to be some mixing and matching going on to see, hey, who fits well at the star, which is Petrie's old position, who's going to fit well back at safety, who are corners. I think they've got a good feel for where that is right now. But definitely you could see some moving around, mixing and matching as they tinker and figure out what works best for them.
Well, as always, if you have a young secondary, you get pressure up front. It's going to help out a lot. So that'll be key, like you said. Okay, schedule wise, second game of the season's at BYU. Now that's a trip. I know Jeff Grimes came from there, right? He didn't come from BYU.
Yep.
So, what do you think about their schedule? October 1st is one that everybody has circled too, because Cowboys, Oklahoma State comes to Waco, which will be a big game there. I'm sure that's going to be a primetime game in Waco. And then they go to OU. They finish with 3 games at home. So, I mean, it's tough. They're playing in the Big 12. It's a tough conference. But what do you think about their schedule, how it lines up for this team?
I think it is tough. And I think that second game on September 10th in Provo is going to tell us a lot. How they fare at BYU, which is a team they beat, and they beat fairly handily last year. But BYU is going to be motivated. It's at home. It's a night game. Provo can get pretty intense for teams coming in there.
Future Big 12 team.
Future Big 12 matchup for sure.
Yep.
And so I think that's going to be a litmus test for us. I think that game will tell us, is this a team that's going to have some growing pains this year and is going to have to endure some more bumps on the road? Or if they go up there and win soundly or win the way they did last year, is this a team that is on track to get back to the Big 12 championship, win 10 or 11 games again? I think that's going to be a big litmus test, but it is tough. Like you said, they've got Oklahoma State at home, the rematch from the Big 12 championship game. They split those 2 games last year, and both of them were very, very hotly contested. And then that Oklahoma game on November 5th, obviously, is going to be a big one. Then they close out the year against Texas. But I think this Big 12 is going to be top to bottom really competitive. It traditionally is. And I'm fascinated to see, because I don't feel like it is in the past where Oklahoma was the clear favorite, the dominant team, and everybody else was fighting for that second spot. Now it feels like it really truly is wide open. And I see Baylor in that top tier with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, as to me, those are the 3 top contenders in the conference. And then there's a little bit of a gap, and then everybody else comes in after that. So it's going to be fascinating to see. But I think, like I said, I think that week 2 game against BYU, will learn a lot about what this Baylor team is really made of.
And finally, I got to ask you about the overall program, where it is, right? They had another good recruiting class. I think it was ranked 3rd, 4th. I mean, depending on where you are, 3rd, I think, in the state of Texas, behind Texas and Texas A&M. I don't know when people say Baylor, I mean, I've gotten used to, maybe I haven't gotten used to the fact that they should be considered one of the best programs now in the state. What Art Briles did, going back to what he did, obviously there were some issues off the field. We don't need to talk about that. But as a program overall, people take Baylor seriously, and that is a huge change. The last decade, 15 years, has been huge for that program. What do you think of the trajectory of where this is going?
Yeah, no, it really is. I think the potential for them being the best program in the future Big 12 when Texas and Oklahoma leave, I think there's a real shot for Baylor to be that team. You look at where they are, you talk about recruiting. They're recruiting well, and it's not just recruiting well, they're retaining players. They have lost about amongst the fewest number of players in the transfer portal nationally than just about any other team out there. I think they only lost 4 or 5 guys on scholarship to the portal over the offseason. That's one of the best retention rates that you'll see across the country. And some of that speaks to Aranda's culture and the way he's been able to build that up. So it's not just recruiting, it's keeping those guys and developing them. That's number one. Where they are from a recruiting footprint standpoint, they're right in the middle of Texas. They're not far from Houston. They're not far from Dallas-Fort Worth. They're basically almost in Central Texas. They're not far from West Texas, and you can get to East Texas too. You've got a route from Waco to just about every part of the state that you want to recruit. So you've got a good recruiting base. The facilities are starting to improve. They're going to break ground on a new team facility after this season. It's going to, I think, scheduled to be completed in 2024. So they're going to upgrade that part of it. McLean Stadium, if you've been, it's one of the most beautiful places to play. They've got a beautiful sight line, obviously, with the Brazos River right in the background.
I have not been.
That's awesome.
I'm going to try to make it to a game. I'm kind of penciled that Oklahoma State game. That's kind of the one I want to go to, but it looks awesome. So
it is. And then the press box is situated like in the corner. So when you're looking out on the field, you're kind of looking out diagonally, and in the background, it's the river, and you can see all the other stuff in the background. It is just awesome. It's a great setup. You've got that. And then the most important thing I think that people don't talk about enough is alignment. They've got a president who just signed a 10-year contract extension. You got an athletic director, Mac Rhodes, who people know here from his days at University of Houston, just signed a 10-year deal. Dave Aranda just signed a long extension in his contract as well. So you've got leadership that's stable. that is getting you the resources you need. You've got a coach that seems like he's pretty content there right now. It seems to be a perfect fit for that university. The university seems to be a fit for him. And so I think the foundation of this program is really strong. They've won 3 Big 12 championships in the last 10 years. They've won double-digit games 5 or 6 times dating back to 2011. They've been one of the more consistent programs in the state of Texas in the last 10, 12 years. And I think that foundation with everything that else that I've listed gives them potential to be even better moving forward.
And I think the change in any program really is the fact that your head coaching position is not a stepping stone anymore. It is a destination. And I feel like Baylor is getting to that point. All right, Sam, thank you so much for all that Baylor insight. We'll see what the Bears have to offer this year. Thanks, buddy.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Many thanks to Sam. He's an encyclopedia when it comes to college football in Texas. One of the smartest guys I know, one of the nicest guys I know, so definitely go check out his work on The Athletic. So, will Baylor repeat? We shall see. In a wide open Big 12, as Sam and I talked about, they might have a chance to do just that.